Hi, welcome back to the I Believe podcast. Today I am joined by Kyleigh LiPira, and she is the CEO of the Melanoma Research Foundation. And Kyleigh has been with the organization since 2015. Prior to her tenure at the MRF, she held multiple positions at Johns Hopkins Medicine, and first leading the fundraising efforts at the Sidney Kimmel Comprehensive Cancer Center, and later leading the fundraising department in the Department of Dermatology, increasing its residency and fellowship program, as well as founding the first Ethnic Skin Fellowship. Kyleigh graduated from Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada, with a degree in mass communication and English, and received her MBA from the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. All right, so Kyleigh, thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad you could be here.
Great. Thank you so much for having me today.
Okay, so can you tell us how and when the Melanoma Research Foundation was founded and why?
Absolutely. So the MRF, which it is commonly known, was founded in 1996 by a patient who was dealing with her third recurrence of metastatic melanoma. And at that time, there were very few options available. In fact, there were only 3 FDA-approved treatments. And it was really out of her own frustration that she had such limited options that she founded the MRF. And over the last 28 years now, our mission has grown. We first started off as a big funder in the research space. And thankfully, over the last 28 years, there have been multiple funders, including the Department of Defense, that has come in and funded melanoma research, as well as ocular melanoma, which is really exciting. But our mission evolved. So now we have a tripartite mission of funding research, educating patients and caregivers, and advocating on behalf of the melanoma community, both on a federal and state level. And we are and continue to be a completely independent organization. So we are not a family foundation. We have a completely independent board of trustees who are actually patients and caregivers themselves. So about 60% are stage 4 melanoma survivors, and the other 40 have been impacted by melanoma in a variety of different ways.
So, can you tell us how the CureOM extension of the Melanoma Research Foundation began and what their specific mission is?
Yeah, it's a great question. So at the MRF, we focus both on cutaneous, which is skin melanoma, as well as the rarer subtypes of melanoma. And those are ocular, mucosal, pediatric, and acral. And the CureOM initiative, which a lot of people always ask us, what does CureOM stand for? It stands for Community United for Research and Education of Ocular Melanoma. And this particular initiative was founded at the MRF in 2011 by a patient and a caregiver. So again, people who are personally impacted by the disease. And the mission of the CureOM initiative, which again is a program underneath the MRF umbrella, is to accelerate research, find new and effective treatment options, and to increase awareness, education, and support of patients, clinicians, and researchers. So the initiative itself really marries and mirrors the MRF's overall mission of research, education, and advocacy.
Wonderful. So, just to recap, and I think I heard it in what you just said, but just to recap and kind of clarify, can you tell us which community CureOM specifically serves?
Absolutely. It's the ocular melanoma community. So, on average, about 2,000 people are diagnosed with ocular melanoma every year. So it is a big program within the MRF's overall programmatic offerings focused solely on ocular melanoma.
Okay, and I'm going to just interject with that includes the patients, the caregivers, as well as the physicians based on what you said in the first part to the other question.
That's correct. So patients, caregivers, clinicians, researchers, and we also have an awareness campaign that I would say also really encapsulates the general public as well, which is called #IGetDilated, which is to create awareness about eye health. Many people are diagnosed with OM after they have a dilated eye exam. So we're really encouraging the general public to treat their eye health as they would, getting an annual wellness exam, or for women at a certain age, getting a mammogram. So really creating that awareness about the eyes and the importance of eye health.
So, can you tell us within CureOM what programs and resources do you offer the ocular melanoma patient community?
Absolutely. So As I mentioned, we have research, education, and advocacy as our pillars. So I'll start with research. So under that umbrella, we fund ocular melanoma research grants. So to date, it's been about 2.5 million solely focused on ocular melanoma research. And what we have done over the last 7+ years is really involve patients and caregivers in that grant review process so that they can review these grants and add their own insights as a patient into those grant review papers. The other way that we involve patients and caregivers in the research space is we work very closely with the congressionally directed Melanoma Research Program, which is a $40 million line item through the Department of Defense. And over the last 2 years, there's been a carve out of $2 million specifically for rare melanomas, of which ocular melanoma has received considerable funding. So we nominate patients and caregivers to serve as what they call consumer reviewers. It's all the government language, but really to give their opinion and their insights through the government, the grant program. So that's kind of how we really involve and facilitate patients in research. The other piece is our vision registry. So this is a patient-reported registry where patients can input their own data about their journey and their experiences with ocular melanoma. And the goal of the registry is really to inform both on the natural history of the disease, because as a rare disease, there's a lot of gaps of knowledge, and also to inform research. So how can we use patient-reported outcomes in research grants to further the knowledge in the field? So that's kind of the research bucket. On education, we have a lot of opportunities for patients and caregivers, and that is through our Education Institute. So we have educational materials, which we mail out at no cost to the community, and these range from general awareness pieces like our I Get Dilated campaign that I mentioned, to a recently diagnosed booklet for patients and caregivers that explains the different stages of the disease and additional resources that they could utilize. We also have webinars, and these are put on pretty frequently, more frequently when there are FDA approvals, like the last couple of years with the 2 FDA approvals. And those, again, we incorporate both experts as well as patients in those webinars. And then the last piece is advocacy. And I feel like this is a really exciting way for patients and caregivers to get involved, because there are a lot of policy issues that disproportionately affect people with a rare cancer. So, for example, every year we bring advocates to the Hill to talk to lawmakers on a slate of different policy issues. And one that has been on the table the last 2 years is telehealth. And as many patients with ocular melanoma know, they often have to confer with specialists outside of the state that they're living in. And pulling telehealth back, which was really kind of the Wild West during COVID, pulling that back and pulling some of those really rights that patients had during COVID back with new policies or sunsetting existing policies is really going to harm patients who have rare forms of melanoma. So really working with our advocates across the spectrum, both in cutaneous as well as in the rare subtypes like ocular, to use their voice and use their story to talk to lawmakers. So that's sort of under the 3 pillars. That's a lot of information. And then the other piece is support services. So we lead a patient support group with Thomas Jefferson University for patients, as well as we have an oncology nurse on staff. It's our Ask a Nurse program. So patients can email our nurse and she can help navigate them. A lot of it's truly navigation, helping them find resources, getting them to the right center. So that's another really great free resource that we have for patients as well.
Wonderful. So can you tell us, if patients or caregivers of those with ocular melanoma are looking to connect with these resources, what would be the best way for them to do so?
So there's a lot of different ways to connect, and I would say it's really on how they want to connect. the first step is signing up for our newsletter. I think that's a great resource. We have two. We have our Spotlight, which is a monthly e-newsletter, which is for the general Melanoma Research Foundation. And I think that offers a lot of great resources if people want to get involved, want to join a Miles for Melanoma 5K. We have a lot of CureOM teams that participate in those. That's one way. If they want to get involved in education, so they want to attend a patient or caregiver symposium, they can email education@melanoma.org, and our team will get them where they need to be. Or if they want to participate in a webinar and share their story, again, emailing education@melanoma.org. We also have social media. We have a CureOM Facebook page and a CureOM Twitter page. In terms of research, if they want to participate as an advocate reviewer, they could email research@melanoma.org. We have a regular cycle where people can express their interest to be an advocate reviewer. We will train them so they're not getting, a 100-page proposal and having to decipher through it. They'll have a really great, robust training on how to review a grant proposal, how to score a grant proposal using the NIH scoring system, and be a part of our research grant program. Or if they want to get involved in advocacy, again, they can email advocacy@melanoma.org. They can get dialed in to our advocacy program and hopefully join us next March on the Hill when we take our training and then go talk to lawmakers.
That sounds like a lot of opportunities to connect and just to get involved. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you tell us MRF and CureOM's aims and goals for the future? What are they hoping to accomplish in, say, the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think that's a great question. And I think all of our aims kind of also mirror our mission. The last few years have been very exciting for the ocular melanoma community. There's 2 new FDA-approved treatments that have come on the horizon, which I think brings a ton of hope to the community. But we know there's still a long way to go. We know that not everybody is responding to these treatments. So I think one of our big aims is how can we, as an advocacy group, really advocate for faster approvals? And that's really through the FDA. We held a listening session with the FDA in January of 2020 and brought together patients and clinicians and caregivers really to urge the FDA to speed up its FDA approval process. And I think that does help move the needle. And I think we need more people in the community really using their voice to advocate for a faster approval process. In terms of education, I think really just empowering patients and giving them the tools they need to make educated decisions. And we know that the more educated a patient is, the better they're able to navigate their care. So that's a really big aim of ours. And our education team is really focused on making sure that those education materials are getting out into the community. And then from an advocacy point of view, I think, unfortunately, the government works quite slowly and these policies take a lot of time, but the more voices and the more people are aware of the policies that are in front of lawmakers and how important their voice is. Having advocates talk directly to their lawmakers makes a huge difference in terms of how we can get things done. So those are really the aims of the CureOM initiative, but also, again, as the MRF as a whole, we really want to create better outcomes for patients and really open those doors and really see people thriving and having hope for the future.
That's excellent. So can you tell us, just to kind of recap, I know you've alluded to it a few times in our earlier parts of the interview, but just tell us a little more specifically, since this is such a hot topic in the area of the cancer community, how does your organization vet and fund specifically research for ocular melanoma? Maybe just walk us through, break down the process.
Sure. So our process is that once a year we put out a request for proposals. And this typically happens at the end of the calendar year, usually in December, and what we call an RFP. So I feel like a lot of times we talk in acronyms. So it's an RFP, or a request for proposals. And this goes out to the entire academic community. So they will receive this request for a proposal, and they need to submit it no later than the end of March. When the proposals are received, we have a scientific advisory committee of both clinicians and specialists in the field, as well as advocate and caregiver reviewers that I mentioned earlier. And they are taken through the process of reviewing these proposals. And we use the NIH scoring system, which is a little backwards. So 1 is the highest, 5 is the lowest. And so the idea is really to have the lowest score. And we always have to really pick the top proposals, and it's all based on the scoring. So there's several rounds of review, and then the awards are typically announced in late summer, so July, August time period. And to date, we've funded $2.5 million specifically in ocular melanoma research. Most recently was a pilot grant of $250,000, and that was the Options Bring Hope Award, and that was actually funded directly by a family who's been impacted by ocular melanoma. So it's a very rigorous process. It's always hard to choose, when you have so many grants, but again, it's really based on the scores and the best science. And they have to submit a report after the first year and then a final report so that we can then turn around and share those results with the community. And to date, it's been amazing. Over the last 25 years, all of this investment in research has not only resulted in patents and new collaborations and, furthering the field in many ways, but it's resulted in FDA approvals. And I think that is the most exciting thing to see, that this influx and this investment has really created results.
Well, Kyleigh, thank you so much for your time. This has been hugely enlightening, and I hope that patients and caregivers in the ocular melanoma community will be able to take advantage of the resources that MRF and CureOM offer. So thank you again for being here with us, and we will see you guys next time.
Thanks, Danet.